This podcast episode is brought to you by The Cry Lounge. The Cry Lounge is an independent publishing company founded by this podcast's hosts, Bonnie Orbison. The Cry Lounge transfers your daydreams onto paper. With 2 book releases the past 2 years, they are preparing to extend their service to other authors and other creatives. To get more details and support this show, there's a link in the description you can check out. The Cry Lounge looks forward to meeting you. My name is Bonnie Orbison, and this is my podcast, Bonnie's Legends. This was the theme song by E.B. Sollis. Welcome everybody to another episode of Bonnie's Legends. This episode you're gonna listen to is, I think, one of the most legendary ones I've ever done. Wow, I don't know how to explain my guest to you. My guest is Josephine de La Baume, and she is a legend. I remember when I texted her for my podcast, I called her a super legend, and I think this title is definitely matching her. So Josephine de La Baume is such an idol for me and such an inspiration daily, and wow, I don't know how I would look like or what life goals I would have without her being my idol. I feel so honored and so delighted to share this episode with you, and I felt so honored interviewing her, to be honest. Like, that was a life goal. Yeah, prove it to yourself. Prove the magic that Josephine de La Baume has to yourself with listening to this interview. Have fun. Ladies and gentlemen, Josephine de La Baume.
Hello.
I feel so honored having you now on my podcast.
Oh, that's so sweet. I feel so honored that someone cares and asked me to do that, to be honest. That's really sweet.
I'm asking you the 5 life questions first.
Yeah.
What's your full name?
Josephine. And then I've got 2 middle names. I'm Josephine Marie Eleonore de La Baume. It couldn't sound more French than that, basically.
When's your birthday?
8th of October, 1984.
Tell me a song that describes you the most.
I would say there's a French song that I really like called... maybe I'll pick 2 French songs. There's one called Le Tourbillon de la Vie by Jeanne Moreau, which means the spin of life, which is about kind of a love story where people meet and then life kind of separates them and then they meet again, and it kind of explains that, like, the spin of life, what the spin of life does to you and what the years do to people and to love, and kind of being able to romanticize it, you know, the difficult times and the good times. And then there's another song I love by Jacques Brel called La Valse à 1000 temps, which means the 1000 times waltz, which is a similar concept in the first song, which is kind of like dancing through life with this kind of endless waltz and kind of going through decades, dancing through them, and the kind of life goes by so fast, and you kind of look back and you're kind of romanticizing everything that has happened, good and bad, but you keep spinning up until the end of your life. So I would say that would describe, you know, I'm kind of a helpless romantic, and I think that I've gone through amazing moments, but I've gone through also very difficult moments, and I somehow have a tendency to romanticize all of it, which is why I probably write songs. You know, I do a few things, but one of them is romanticizing everything by writing songs about all of those things that happen through life, good and bad.
Describe yourself in 2-3 sentences.
I think I am both quite a positive and anxious person at the same time, which doesn't go hand in hand, but somehow it kind of does with me. I think that I am also a helpless romantic, and I think that has played both in my favor at times and not in my favor at others. But I would rather kind of live life like it's one endless movie than just one bleak story.
Who's your legend?
Who's my legend? I think my grandmother, which is because she was part of the French resistance during the Second World War. And she was such a well-put woman. And when she told me her story at a young age, I couldn't believe everything she'd done. You know, at the time in France, the resistance was a very small community of people. And we always talk about it in such a big way, but it was actually very few people that kind of stood up and tried to, you know, fight the Nazis and do kind of commando missions where they were taking huge risks, and a lot of people were collaborating in France. And so so I think, you know, she had crazy stories. She lost her first husband in this boat. You know, she went to find him in Africa, and he was in the army, and she kind of put, you know, had a little kind of army coat on. She went to find him, and the boat ended up being torpedoed by a Spanish submarine, and the boat sank in the water, and she was one of the 5 survivors, and it's a boat that was the size of a Titanic. And then as soon as she got back on her feet, she was saved by an English boat, and as soon as she was saved and spent 3 months in hospital, she remembered that her husband, before letting himself die in front of her in the sea, said, if you want to keep fighting, you have to get in touch with this general. Which she did. She remembered the name, and she continued fighting. She fell in love with that general, ended up having my mom with him, and she continued fighting. So she was kind of like she was a real little like fighter, you know, and she had strong beliefs, and she was so young at the time, you know. I don't think she was even 20, to be honest. So I would say, like, I think because also I was so close to her, to she has such a heroic life, and then she did a lot of stuff with charity throughout her whole life. So I think she was always my hero, because she was the first heroic person that I met face to face as a child. So I think I always looked up to her so much my whole life. So that would be her. I'd say her.
That sounds like a movie.
I know. Probably everybody says that.
So, I mean, 1 year ago, I became a huge fan of you, the Film Noir and La Mariée. Am I pronouncing that right? Yeah. So La Mariée was my summer song of 2019. And then the Thriller, my admiration and respect for you grew. It just grew. I was like, wow, okay.
Oh, that really is so heartwarming. Thank you. That means a lot, honestly. That really means a lot. Especially when I get like young girls like being into it. I feel so moved. Because I don't know why, because I guess like it's not that I write for anyone in specific, but it really moves me when young girls are into it, and it seems to kind of touch them, because I get a lot of message from from young girls. So I'm glad that if it reaches out to anyone in general, but some reason, it really moves me.
But it's kind of like the teenage sound, like this rock thing, and then also some kind ballads, and it's really like it's a chaos of feelings, and I think that's what we're feeling when we're teenagers.
Yeah, it's like basically that's the problem. I haven't really changed. I haven't grown much emotionally, to be honest, since I'm still like, I get heartbroken like crazy. I fall in love like crazy. So I think maybe that's why people relate, because your first loves are kind of like the strongest. They're supposed to be the strongest, but I seem to be like going through life with the same intensity. So maybe that's why. That's a good explanation.
Okay, great. And then I wished you a happy birthday last year. And then you text me back. And since that moment, I'm really like, you became my biggest inspiration, my biggest idol, like really.
Oh, that's so sweet. Well, thank you for wishing me a happy birthday. It's never a day that I like so much. So I guess, thank you. That's really sweet. I'm glad that I responded, and here we are.
Yeah. You responded me and I sent you like, oh my God, you responded me. I'm going crazy right now. And then you texted like something like, oh, that's so sweet.
Because it is sweet. That's so sweet. And I think like anytime you do something creative, which you already do, and so I think when people, take time to listen to the stuff that you do and take time to actually pay attention and not just kind of like in passing, you kind of have to be grateful, because it is because of people like you that take the time that like artists can survive. And also like I think when you make the kind of music that I do, it's almost like a diary. It's something, it's really personal. So if it kind of reached to someone, I'm not making like a pop song with like a big anthem as the chorus, and not saying that that's a bad thing. I'm just saying like it is so personal that if like it's almost like people reading my diary, and if in some extent they can relate, it's almost like a less lonely place. You know what I mean?
But you started your career as a model, right?
Yeah.
How did it start?
I mean, I never like, I'm short and I'm very curvy, so I never really thought I would ever do pictures and stuff like that, to be honest. So I think it came because I was acting as well. I was doing acting and I was making music. And then as soon as I started doing that, it came as a time where like brands wanted to work with like people, not just models that looked like this like ideal woman with like endless legs and very skinny and all this stuff. And so it came as a moment of a need of like being able to relate more to people that were on pictures. So I started being asked to do some campaign, but I think it was always as the idea that I never came as like a model because I don't look like one. But more as like an actress and singer. And then they would be like, and it was kind of, they used to use actresses and stuff like that for being campaign. But I think for like smaller stuff, and now they didn't do it as much. It was very much like models were doing that. And it was like they were superstars or supermodel or just models. And then there was like another category, which was like for actress and that. So I think it kind of started like overlapping much more fashion and music and cinema.
What's your high? Because once I read that you won 17, then I reading that you won 68. I don't know. I'm always like confused.
I'm really short. I'm 1.62 meters.
Really?
Yeah, I'm not 68. I wish I was. No, I'm not 68. I'm 1.62 meters. So I'm really short and curvy. I've got an ass, I've got boobs. I'm quite curvy. So I was really like surprised when at first people were like, "Oh, do you want to do this campaign?" I was like, "What?" Like, but I think it's just because people, they wanted to work with models, and then some brands wanted to work with people that did other stuff, and that maybe were more relatable to some extent.
Okay. Because I was always like, okay, she's 168 because I'm now 165. And I was always like, I want to be as tall as Josephine de La Baume is.
But you're taller. You're taller than me now. You've actually like...
Okay, so I'm taller than you now.
You are. And you'll keep growing probably. So you're actually in good position to make it to 1.68 meters. I'm jealous.
Yeah, but my mom is always, I think, oh my God, I think she was 162 and she's now 158 or something.
Don't tell me I'm going to get shorter. Don't say that.
But I
I'll
was
make sure
always
I
like,
don't. He just needs to stand straight. I'll make sure I stand really straight. Or I'll just start lying. That's also, no, I'm kidding. But I think there's also like, when you're in school, you know, when I was like little, when I was kind of like in the tall, not tall, but I was in the medium tall girls. And then suddenly everybody started growing. And I was like, wait, what's happening? Why am I not growing? Because I guess I went through puberty young. And I was like, felt so, you know, uncomfortable with myself. I remember like being really uncomfortable with having boobs. I remember being uncomfortable with having hair. I remember like the girls didn't really have it. Like I was earlier than other girls, you know, around 11, I started kind of like, and I used to try and hide it. And I used to be kind of like uncomfortable with my size. I felt like I was short and I wanted to be one of those tall girls, like blah, blah, you know, those stories. And then I think that's why later on in life, I think I really didn't like think of myself as someone that would be hired to do anything in fashion or be on pictures. So I was really like, wow, like it's crazy, it's possible. And so it really shows that, and I think more now than even at the time where I was starting to do that, it's really has to do with like, you know, being kind of comfortable with yourself, whatever you look like, you know, and just kind of really embrace it and just, you know, roll with it, because there is no such thing as perfection. I mean, it's just a complete illusional concept. And so, and I think your generation is much more aware of that than my generation was when I was your age, you know?
I think I was also around 11, so I was also really young when I became like major and everything crew and that stuff. And I still remember like my best friend is French. She's French German. Yeah. So her mom is German and she married a French man, and then we kind of the same age and our parents are friends. So we were always together. And I remember the day she was taller than me. I still remember the moment I was like, oh, okay. It was like, okay. And now she's 175, 6, something about that.
Bitch.
It was always like, okay.
Yeah, it's just that odd moment.
Yeah, I feel so small.
Suddenly you're like, wait, my best friend grew suddenly also, and I was like, wait, don't let me down.
Yeah.
You do it.
Yeah, and every time, because we're seeing us just so a few times, it's always like, you crew. And she's like, no, I didn't. And I was like, you're taller than I crew, and you're taller still. It's like,
you're like, no. Yeah, you feel betrayed at first. Then you get used to it. You're like, whatever.
Yeah. What was, when you were a child, what was your dream job?
I wanted to be, well, I think like a lot of little girls, I wanted to be a ballerina. So I did 9 years of ballet. And then I really didn't have the body to be a ballerina at all. Okay. Like they're so, you know, long and like, they don't have to be tall, but they're quite, that they're much drier than I am, you know?
Okay.
And if you have boobs, it's not great. I mean, and also to be honest, when I look at pictures of me as a kid dancing, I mean, I was confident I was a good dancer. The truth is I really wasn't. When I see the pictures, like all the girls are like long and like they're like really graceful, and I'm not. I'm literally like, you know, quite like clumsy and quite curvy, and it's sweet, but it's really like that was not my destiny. It was pretty obvious. Like I think just my parents were really sweet and just kept me in there and just kept me believing I would for a while, because it was 9 years. But when I look at and I was never getting the like choreography right. I mean, it was just like a mess. And I think because the teacher kind of liked me, she put me with the older girls, so it looked even more crazy. I was like this big when they were this big, and I had no idea what the hell was going on.
But then you have to celebrate your younger self that you were so confident in doing that.
I was sure I was doing an amazing job, to be honest with you. It's only quite recently that I saw pictures, I was like, oh my God, I was really bad. Like, it's crazy, like the lie that they kept me in for so long. And then after that, pretty much soon after, I knew I wanted to do acting. And music came a bit later, because it's not that I didn't want to be a musician. I just always thought that I was doing a lot of music. I started piano when I was 6 years old, and I always wanted to play piano. And then my brother and I we always making music together. But I felt like it was too enjoyable to be a job,
Mhm.
because it was just so our way of bonding and hanging out with each other. So I never knew that could be a profession. I just couldn't, there was like, so eventually when I felt like we actually were making valuable stuff, I was like, maybe we should play to people. But it took me kind of a while to get there. It's like, whereas with acting, I went to acting school and all that. So yeah, that's the story.
So acting came first.
I think acting came first in the sense that I knew I'd have to do uh I had to go to classes, whereas with music I just always played it at home. I don't know, I was shy to play to people because I guess it was more personal. With acting you kind of can hide behind a character, even though it's just as personal, because you have to kind of dig within yourself and relate to the character. So it's often quite an honest process to
Yeah.
act. So you have to kind of reveal something truthful about yourself, but you can still pretend you're hiding behind the character even though you're not. With music, I couldn't really hide in any way, I think. So I think, yeah, but I kind of ended up working in both at the same time, because even though I was going to acting school, and I went to an art school as well, I was still playing music. But it's the both kind of picked up around the same time, because I had another band before, and we kind of
Mhm.
get signed around the same time that I did my first movie. So I think they were always kind of like parallel to each other.
Well, I heard the interview. I didn't understand everything, but I heard the interview. I listened to the interview on this radio station in France.
Oh, France Inter, yeah.
I was actually quite happy that I got, because sometimes, if it's a different country, they like close it for your country, like the BBC, but this radio station didn't do that. That was great.
Oh, nice. You were able to listen to it. Yeah. It was very nice, actually. There was really interesting people on the show. It was, thanks for listening. It was, there was this writer called Anne Scott, and she wrote a book about Judaism, and she has a lot of like music references in it. And she was really cool. She was very clued up about music. And then there's another singer there, Jana there, who makes very different type of music, but is very talented, I think, in what she does. And so it was like a nice like combo of people, and the two people interviewing are great. And then we just played a couple songs live, which went okay. I think. Let's see. So
It was great.
weird. Okay, good. Thanks. You never know how it's gonna get mixed on those radio shows. This show, I have to say, they're always quite nice. They let you kind of listen to it first when you rehearse, so that it doesn't sound too different from who would mix it. But yeah, it's a nice show.
The interviewer said something about SingTech, your first band of your brother, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't understand I understand the question, but I didn't understand the answer. So you had this band, and why did you stop making music via this band?
I mean, the answer that my brother gave on the show is quite true, and I'll add a couple things to it. Is that I think the first band we had was much more candid, and I think we were probably more innocent at the time, so it kind of made sense at the time to do something more. Some of the songs are a bit more poppy, and we worked in a very different way, where we first wrote the songs and then wrote the lyrics, and worked a lot in the studio. We met Nelly Hooper, so we worked with him first, and then we worked with Samy Osta, who then produced some stuff from Film Noir and produced La Femme and stuff. And I think it was just, we would do stuff in studio and then play live, and then try and match what we had done in the studio. Whereas when we started to write for Film Noir, which we didn't know was going to be Film Noir, it started from my writing, which was almost like a diary of whatever had happened emotionally. and then we would kind of write the music around it to support the text, and then play the songs live as much as possible, so that when we played it in the studio, we almost did just a few takes, so there was much more of an idea of urgency, and it was very much like as close as possible to the initial feeling of when I wrote the lyrics page. So I think it's kind of the opposite process. And I think also the whole sentiment, I wrote in French quite a lot this time, the whole sentiment of the band was very different, and I just didn't feel like the same project. And then we ended up working with different musicians, so that's why we kind of stopped the other band. But it doesn't mean that, I mean, I just wasn't inspired in the same way, you know. There was no reason, like, I really liked playing with those people. I just felt like naturally a new sentiment came because of life events, and they just didn't really match the whole atmosphere of the previous project.
Yeah.
And I wanted to work differently.
Yeah, they kind of have really two different, like it's an opposite. Like if you're listening to Film Noir, you're more maybe darker or it's more alternative,
Yeah,
and Sing Tag is really poppy and you're like thinking about being happy and that stuff. And Film Noir is more like, okay, this melancholic, and yeah, sometimes we're sad too. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. That's exactly what it is. And I just think that it was two different times in our lives and two very different projects. And I think it just, yeah, at some point, some stuff happened to me that just felt I needed to write about a specific theme, which was heartbreak and confusion and blah blah, you know, which is quite not original, but there's endless ways of writing about it. And it just and I think musically I wanted to have a bigger influence, so I wanted to write the melodies and not just decide on the arrangements together. So I started being more involved with the music side, not just the lyric side. So yeah, so it was just a different project.
Who are the members of Film Noir? It's a little bit confusing.
Yeah, I know. So basically what happened is at this point we've got so my brother and I, then we've got Mathieu, who's a drummer, then we've got Martin Roquia, who's the guitar player, and then Victor Le Dauphin, who's the bass player. But previously we had Virgile Arndt at bass, and we had Guillaume Rotier at the drum. But Guillaume, we kind of borrowed Guillaume from this band called Rendezvous, who are friends of ours. He's his own person, but under one condition is that when they go on tour, he has to go back. And so this transaction eventually happened, sadly. And then he had to go on tour with Rendezvous. And then, so we needed someone at this point, and so we went with his best friend. We still keep it in the family. And then Virgile, we played together for a while, but he also had another project with his brother, which he then really wanted to pursue, and they moved to LA together. And then we were like, you know, he couldn't match the two, and that was fine. And I think that's why. And now, I think on the record, you know, I really like the idea of having a band as opposed to like just my brother and I doing everything together. And even though we kind of are the initial thing and we write a lot of it, we try and now get the musicians more and more involved, you know, because they really kind of like make the songs better anyway, you know, and they have since the beginning. But I think now we're trying to like write together even more, so that there's more and more the spirit of a band, and not just, you know, people supporting the people writing. So I think we got there in the end. Let's see.
You also recorded, like Film Noir recorded also in LA, right?
We recorded in LA at Kundo. Our friend Kundo's studio, which is amazing. There's literally like nothing. There's just one computer from the 90s. I don't know when it's from. And then it's just tapes and nothing, and a stage. And he's just really good at. Yeah, so we really recorded it, you know, on tapes, and just each song is like a couple takes, you know. So it was a lot of like rehearsing first and refiguring out the the thing. So I think even if there's little accidents or mistakes, we kept them. And then we have a bunch of people playing on it. We have Cole and Zumi from the Black Lips who came one night late and just, started playing. They were supposed to arrive at 12 and they came later, and they kind of stormed in and played in for like a few hours. She played the saw and he plays guitar. And then we had our friend Kieran Jacqueline play. And then we have Sasha from La Femme who plays this instrument who I can't remember the name. It goes like, oh, oh, oh. It kind of just move your hand and the frequency.
Yes.
I can't remember what it's called, like xylophone. I don't know what it is. Anyway, he played that. So we just had people coming in and out. Sasha from La Femme played in Paris, but the other ones were in LA. And it was just really fun. And we recorded fast, but I do like what it's brought to the record. And then we did some recordings in Paris with Sami, but I think you can't really create that kind of urgency and impulse unless you're put in that kind of situation. I mean, it just won't be as visceral, maybe,
I think you can hear that on this EP that was taken on tapes.
Yeah.
This retro thing. Yeah. I really love that. Like at the end of one song, you hear really when everybody stops.
Yeah. I know, and you can hear, yeah, totally. But I'm glad you hear it. I mean, it's just kind of a warmer sound too, in general.
Yeah, but I love that if songs have this, if you can hear it was a live recording or it was recorded on old school stuff like a tape. I love that. It's just
Well, you feel like you're in the room with everyone.
Yes.
That's what's nice.
Yes, exactly. So now you released 2 EPs. Will you release an album too?
Yeah, we're about to record our album in October. We're hoping to record it in October. So we're trying to find a place that would maybe be not Paris or not London. We're looking at Portugal. We were looking at, anywhere that has a studio and where we that's not outrageously expensive and where we can all focus a bit more.
Yeah.
And then a bunch of us in the band won't be able to go out as much. They'll just have to focus. I'm joking when I say that, but I think it'll be a nice, band dynamic too. And I think it's just, it'll be interesting to see what happens, not going home every night and just being a bit in a bubble altogether,
Yeah, but I'm looking forward to having an album.
Yeah, well, it's already mostly written, to be honest.
Okay.
Yeah, so we wrote it very much a lot more together. We wrote the initial thing, my brother and I, but then we worked a lot in the studio around the arrangements, more than I think just as much as before, probably a bit more. And so we're quite close. I think beginning of October we'll start recording. We'll be done by end of October.
I also have to tell you to fangirling stuff. So I had birthday last week, and the night before the interview was on the radio, and you sang Elisa, and I had this song spinning in my head. In the minute I became 16, I had this song spinning in my head. I was like,
oh, happy birthday though.
Thank you.
That's so nice. I'm so glad I was part of that. That's so sweet. Love that. That makes me really happy, trust me. Did you have a good birthday?
It was an emotional roller coaster, let me say that.
Was it? Why?
Yeah, my brother and his girlfriend came. They are living in Barcelona, and they came, and I was really happy about that. But in the morning I woke up and my grandpa told me oh, maybe the weather is not that good and you should stay home, not come with us. And I was like, wow, that's how my birthday starts. My grandpa tells me that our vacation doesn't start. And I was like, okay. And then we called and said, hey, however the weather is, I'm coming. I love to see you. And then my mom and her boyfriend discussed about a thing, and then mom discussed with me, and then she left. Then her boyfriend discussed with me, then he left, and then I went to my brother, but then his girlfriend was like discussing with him, and I was like, what's going on? And everybody was telling me, and everybody, like, when mom came home again, she was like really depressed because she had this fight with her boyfriend and laid in bed, and was like coming in, was like, can you hug me please, I need some love of you. And I was like, mom, I'm pissed off of you right now, I can't hug you right now, I'm just pissed off.
That's a really dramatic start of this new year for you.
It was.
Maybe it's the opposite. Maybe it's like resolution and salvation.
Hopefully. I mean, the next days weren't that good, and now I'm here on vacation, and my grandparents are not, they not harmonize. How are you saying? Like, they're not really harmonic. I don't know.
Harmonized. I don't know.
Yes.
Now you're asking a French person, there isn't much harmony.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
So it's kind of stressful.
Well, you know what? I don't want to seem too mystical, but it's full moon tonight, so you might want to write a little full moon manifestation.
That's a good thing. Actually, when
Have you ever
September
done
started,
it?
you have done it.
Have you ever done it?
Yeah, I mean, I'm always like manifesting some things. And at the beginning of this year, I wrote like for every month a manifestation.
Wow,
But
so you're like a pro manifestation.
I'm always manifesting. Like, I don't know, I'm listening to music and I'm always writing down my goals. For example, yesterday it was start of September, and I read somewhere that you should manifest something for this month, and I was like just writing down my goals. Like, it wasn't like interview the I don't know, someone. It was just like I'm reading to you now, then you know what I mean.
Yeah. Yes, okay.
So I wrote my September goals are doing nothing, expecting nothing, appreciating everything, feeling finally enough and loved by myself.
That's good. That's very that's a wise manifestation, it sounds like.
Yeah, like things I learned from this first week of being 16. Yeah, but let's
If
see.
you start like that at 16, you're gonna be like Gandhi by the time of or little monks or something, some kind of higher spiritual being by the age of 30.
Yeah, I don't know. My brother has a good mindset and is really spiritual, and he always told me like manifesting and visualizing things. And there we're coming to the second fangirling thing I want to tell you. The day before I became 16, I was listening to Film Noir and La Mariée. And the funny thing was that I remembered the day before I became 15, I manifested or played in my fantasy that I'm actually talking to you and that we kind of, I don't know, friends.
That's so sweet. And it happened. We ended up talking to each other a year later. That's so crazy.
Yes, that was really crazy when I realized that. I was like, oh, okay.
Wow.
Yes.
Did you manifest it in your head? Did you try and picture it, or did you just thought about it?
I think I'm having a picture in it. I'm like playing it or something.
Yeah. I'm like, wait, I'm asking advice for tonight. I'm like, how did you do your manifestation? How does it work? I just write things on a piece of paper and then I burn it. And I look at the moon while I burn it. But I never used to do anything like that. And then I started doing it during lockdown because my friend grew up in Ibiza and she's quite witchy in that way. And she was like, no, we have to manifest. And I was like, you know what? I mean, what have I got to lose? There's nothing else to do. I'm on lockdown. And so I did it. And I have to say, I started seeing the results of it, slowly. It's not exactly what I asked. But it's I was quite impressed. It's like, wow, this shit is real. So I'm doing it again tonight.
I wanted to ask you, because I recognize that you moved around a lot in your life, and I wanted to ask you where you all lived in your life.
So I grew up in Paris, and then I studied in London for a bit. And then, for a few years. And then I moved to New York. And so I went to university in London, and I moved to New York where I studied acting I had studied fine art and acting in London, and I studied acting in New York and worked for a contemporary artist called Tom Sachs. Then I left New York and I went back to Paris. And then when I got back to Paris, I started working. I got a couple of parts, and then I met my ex-husband, and he lived in New York. I lived in Paris at the time, so we had to find a compromise where he could work and I could work. So we moved to London together. Then we moved to LA together. Then we split up. Then he stayed in LA. I went back to Paris, and then I was kind of back and forth between Paris and London. And then I've been pretty much since between Paris and London.
And what was your favorite place to live?
I really like living between Paris and London because they're so different, and I love English people. I love my place in London. And then in Paris, I just like the lifestyle. I think, you come out of your place and everything is like so localized. It's easy. It's almost like, now the moment Paris is so exciting, kind of reminds me of when I lived in New York, like over 10 years ago. It's like, there's an interesting music scene. There's interesting directors. There's, it's a Latin city. So like, it's just.
And it's your home country.
And it's my home country. It's like cafe terraces, and it's very warm, it's like, it's convivial. It's a warm city. So I quite like living between the two of them. But I think if I ever had to choose, I think, Paris will always is in my heart forever, right? This is home. Now I would feel very sad to leave London. I really love London.
I don't know. Yeah, you know that you're my idol, so I basically like watched every video on YouTube. And I remember one video from 2009, 8, 7, I don't know, but you had like bangs and like long blonde hair. And you just moved to London and you showed the camera your room or your flat, everything was empty. Yeah, and I loved this video because it was so cute. Yeah.
No, I was it was really the beginning of like me moving back to London. I think they kind of wanted me, it was like slightly staged in the sense that they wanted me to just say things, like about being the French who just moved to London. So it was a little bit of like just real chat and a little bit of like, let's enhance the situation. But it's sweet. I haven't seen it for so long. I don't think I've seen it since it's come out, to be honest. But yeah, I probably must seem quite innocent at the time.
I don't think so.
No? Maybe I'm just delusional, and maybe I was never that innocent, to be honest. I don't know.
But I think you're always thinking that, like, if I'm thinking about me 2 years ago or something, you're always thinking something like this because you always experience in these 2 years things.
That's true. And to be honest, like, I remember seeing a video of like, somehow at some point I found some old tapes from when I was a kid, and then in the middle of it, so I started watching it, and in the middle of it, it cuts to, I must have used it as a teenager, so pretty much the age that you are now. I used it as a teenager, or like a young woman, because I guess you're almost no longer a teenager, but I used it as, so I must have been like 15 or 16 or something on that. Maybe I was a little younger than you. I was maybe 14, 15. I was 15. And I'm filming myself. So it cuts to me with my boyfriend at the time, and I'm like filming us on the mirror in the bathroom, and it was like VHS tape, right? and it cuts back to my childhood, and I was like, oh, and I heard my voice in the way I was talking, and I don't have, because at the time we didn't have iPhones and stuff, so not that much it's documented,
Mm-hmm.
so it's just whatever you remember of yourself and of your friends or whatever you want to remember. But your generation has everything on iPhone. You can kind of like go back to like how you were and remember. I honestly have almost nothing, but I remember seeing that small moment and being like, wow, I didn't remember being like that. Like I was very like confident, and I really thought, I was much more womanly than I remembered. And I was very like I was kind of big mouth and a bit quite like, probably more badass than I ever will be again or was. Like I was very much like didn't give a fuck and really thought that I ruled the world, but not in an arrogant way, just in a kind of young bit way,
I
But
understand this feeling.
Even the way I spoke to my boyfriend was just so confident. There was nothing like sweet, and like I was just very like, yeah, whatever, come here, baby. I was just like, what? I was 14 or 15. I didn't speak like that. What's up? Come here, baby. I was just like, who was I? It's funny because I remember being like that sort of, but much more. I was like, I have a tenderness towards like the younger version, obviously, just because you always think like, oh, like I was so young, and now I'm like, I'm not, oh, I'm very much like, who is this person? Like she's so like aggressive and like, so it was funny. So yeah, I guess we're all a bit delusional when it comes to our own identity through the years.
Yeah. I have to tell you again a story. I'm such a storyteller. So actually with my bangs, I really had short bangs because of Angel Olsen. I really love her. And she has like really
That's just
short,
great.
yeah,
I
she
really
has
like
really short bangs. And I was like, okay, my mom is a hairdresser, and I was like, Mom, can you like make a short bangs? And she was like, yes, let's do it. And then beginning of June, it started to grow. And I was like, oh, this looks kind of like Josephine looked when she was younger.
That's true.
And
Because I
then,
had it on the side a little bit. It is a little bit like that. That is true. Because you have quite wavy hair. I mean, right now we have quite similar hair, to be honest.
yeah.
Your hair is quite blonde, so is mine. Usually they're much more red, but with the sun they got really blonde. But it's true. I used to always do the hair on the side like this. I loved it.
Yeah, and I was like, Mama, I have to cut my bangs. It's too long. And she was like, yeah, short it as it was, like Angel Olsen style. I was like, no, let's just keep it like a little bit like Josephine. That was great.
Oh, that's so sweet. Well, I'm glad that somehow someone appreciated that hairstyle. That was just pretty much an accident, I think, pretty much every time. But oh, that's sweet. Thank you. I might go back to it now. And seeing it on you, I'm like, maybe it was kind of a good look.
Is your natural hair red or?
My hair is kind of closer to that, my natural hair. So my hair is like dark blonde. It's like strawberry blonde.
Mm-hmm.
It's like blonde, but it's changed. It used to be, when I was a kid, it was quite strawberry, but it was like dark red blonde. When I was really young, it was quite brown, then it got quite dark red. Then it got quite blonde for years with some red in it, and then it got really dark naturally, like much darker blonde. So I think, because I dye my hair, make it more red. I don't really know which color it is anymore, but I think from what I gather during lockdown and the roots and stuff, I think it's pretty much kind of darker in the top, and then it's quite similar to that. Maybe a little less blonde, a little darker. But it's strawberry blonde.
How is it to work with your brother? Is that sometimes I'm working with my brother as well, but how is the experience to work with a brother? Is there like a difference for you as to work with somebody else who's not your sibling?
I think, yeah, there's definitely a difference. I think because we grew up together, we're so close, and we understand each other's. I think we work so fast also, and we're very complementary. So I think when, he plays me a few chords and I start singing melodies and stuff like that, very quickly he knows where I'm heading. I know where he's heading. very often we agree with each other. We very rarely disagree. I'll be like, I don't think that works. And he'll be like, yeah, totally, I'll try something else. And I'll be like, yeah, that works better. Or the opposite, I'll say something and he'll be like, what about if we could that? Like we collaborate very well.
Mm-hmm.
And I think because we know each other so well, we kind of always, we know each other's weaknesses and strengths. And I think his strengths are my weaknesses. My strengths are his weaknesses. So it allows us to elevate the songs because we need each other in a way, and because we believe in each other and we trust each other in the work. Yeah, so I think, I don't know that anyone else could understand me as well as my brother, at least at this point of my life, to express something so personal and to kind of support it and write with me. It's a very generous collaboration. It's a very open-hearted collaboration. It's not so much like, okay, put your talent and mix it with mine, and then or my skill rather than my talent. And it's more like, okay, we're looking at the same picture right now. How do we project it musically?
Yeah. Also, if the weakness and the strength, I have that too with my brother. I'm always telling him, if he's weak, I'm strong. And if I'm weak, he's strong.
That's nice.
But it's always like that.
I don't think it's always like that. I think a lot of siblings kind of, knock heads and go against each other or are competitive. I get over paranoid with my brother because I love him so much. I'm always terrified something's going to happen. So I'm always like, are you okay? Like when he calls me, I'm already scared. I'm like, are you okay? Almost like, yeah, I'm fine. I just wanted to give you the dates of that. I'm like, okay. But I think when people are on, what you're saying, you think of your brother and then you call him. I think when people are connected and close, they can feel each other. We are connected, and it's the same way. Speak about someone and your phone rings and you haven't spoken to them for 2 years, but maybe you stayed connected to some extent.
Yeah. Are you the older one, or is Alexandra the older one?
I'm the older one, and then I've got an older brother and an older sister.
Really?
Yeah, from a different, but they're much older than us. They're from my mom's first marriage.
Okay. I think I'm done now. I asked you everything.
Okay.
I mean, basically, next week I'm gonna have a new question.
Feel free to call me. We have a lot of time on our hand right now at the Love during this basically semi-lockdown situation where things keep getting cancelled. But yeah, feel free to call me and ask me more questions. And also, I'll make sure that I send you a T-shirt. The other you show me the one you have. Oh, you have the one like that. So you don't have the one with the square like that.
No.
Okay. Okay, so we'll send the other one. It was so lovely to speak.
Which size it is. Let me see.
Tell me the size. Do you like it small? Or do you like...
Ooh, my God!
That's
it's an M.
It's an M. Do you want it smaller or do you want it medium?
No, I like medium stuff. I like when it's a little bit oversized.
Okay, so we'll stick to medium then. Do you want it in black or in white?
I think black would be nice to have one white, one black.
Okay. Well, I'll see what I have, but I think we'll arrange. You'll send me your address and ship it for you. Of course. Of course. Well,
okay.
Thank you so much for asking me. And I can't wait to be able to read your book when it's in English.
And that was my interview with Josephine de La Baume. If you like this interview with Josephine, then make sure to follow her and me on social media to get more content from her. If you want to listen to something that I cut out now here in this episode, then make sure to become a Patreon and be able to listen to some stuff others can't listen to. Yeah, that's it. That's it for this week. I feel emotionally blessed having interviewed her, and I hope you had fun. I hope you have a wonderful evening. and we'll see us next week for another legend. Your host, Bonnie Orbison.